there seems to be a lot of sugar within foods that we eat. Can you talk about the Ayurvedic perspective on this?
Yes, Peter, and it's wonderful to introduce that holistic perspective of the 6 tastes, because Ayurveda goes in great detail into each taste and its particular effects, and then emphasizes the need to have all tastes, and especially to have all tastes, if possible, in every meal. And the old texts will say that if you have 6 tastes in every meal, you will never be ill. And if you have 5 tastes in every meal, you will occasionally be ill. And if you have 4 tastes or less, then you will have health problems. So it's an interesting concept, isn't it? But the sweet taste is a very broad taste, and one which is accepted in Ayurveda to be taken in good proportion, because it's very, very nourishing, which is, of course, why children love the sweet taste, because they're growing and need nourishing, need to support their growing tissues with that sweet, nourishing taste and foods. And so we're designed to interact with nature around us and to recognize what's good for us. And so sweet taste is something that we all appreciate. But it used to be that the sweet tastes were the natural tastes of the food. In other words, the grains or the vegetables, as well as the fruits, had a lot of sweetness about them. And therefore we were drawn to eating those foods for our nourishment. It was unfortunate that we started to extract sweetness because of our greed. Greed is kapha, you see, and sweetness increases kapha. And the more out of balance you go, the more you want what is wrong for you, and then you're into big kapha problems of obesity and mucousy, catarrh, coughs, colds, and health problems. So this extracted sweetness is so intense, it disturbs and throws the body off. So whereas people ate approximately 2 pounds of sugar in the year 1900, it's more like an average of 160 pounds of sugar per year now. Now that is really disturbing the natural balance of our bodies and contributing to a lot of illness nowadays. And this has unfortunately got far more accelerated since about the 1970s, when corn syrup was propulsed onto the international scene, because it was a very cheap, easily produced source of sugar. Now, sugar contains glucose and fructose. Glucose is good for us in the sense that we need it for energy. Fructose is incredibly bad for us, virtually, you could say, a slow poison, because the fructose is transformed in the liver again and again, and the first thing it does is it cuts off your feeling of satiation. The hormone that tells you, I've had enough to eat, is negated by this fructose. So we don't know we've had enough to eat, we want more. And this is used very cynically by industry. You think of Coca-Colas, which used to be in small cans and then came in big ones and now come in giant containers. And fructose is deliberately there, as is a few other things, to make you thirsty, like a diuretic, caffeine, and to stimulate you and give you a sugar rush so that you then have a sugar collapse and need more of the same. It's unfortunate the way we're being manipulated by industry, and good to appreciate that fact so you choose your unprocessed foods. Because this corn syrup is now in every processed food almost. You see it, it's just everywhere. And this corn syrup has very high fructose, and therefore not only are you not recognizing you've had enough to eat, which is tending you towards obesity in the first place, it's that this fructose is subsequently transformed in the liver to give chemicals that make you resistant to insulin. So your cells now cannot use your insulin, So this tends you towards diabetes and high sugar levels. And so we've increasing incidences of obesity and diabetes. And if that weren't enough, people worry about fats in their diet. It's not the fats so much as the sugar, because the fructose is transformed into a low density lipoprotein, it's called, the bad fats. Now, these high density lipoproteins are fats that are good for us, the omega-3s and the flaxseed oil. They're good because we need oils to power our enzymes and to our hormones and to create our tissues. But the bad fats, the ones that do us harm, are low density lipoproteins. And there are two types. There's one which is a big sloppy molecule that doesn't do much harm, and there's one tiny little molecule that will burrow under the lining of the blood vessel and start the process of creating plaque that gives rise to heart attacks and strokes. Fructose is transformed by the liver into this bad fat. So this fructose is contributing also to our heart disease and strokes. And if our health systems have great problems at the moment, and the complaint is that they're underfinanced, they're not necessarily underfinanced, it's that they're wrong to be focused on disease rather than focusing on empowering people to create health. Because if people were really responsible for their health and chose to eliminate fructose alone from their diet, the epidemic of obesity, which is gathering momentum around the world, would be halted in its tracks. Diabetes and heart attacks would diminish, leaving a lot more resources in health systems to cope with other illnesses. So sugars are something that we should really avoid. Have the sweetness of the fruit and the foods. Use dates to sweeten or raisins to sweeten. And insofar as possible, clear that sugar from your diet. There is a herbal which is now available from South America, which is incredibly intensely sweet and used in tiny amounts can really satisfy your need for sweet, and that's stevia. And I think that would be a good substitute. But remember, Vata, Pitta and Kapha. If you're Kapha, you need more of the other tastes and only a minimal amount of sweet. If you're Pitta, some sweetness is good, and Vata, some sweetness is good.
So what about raw sugars? Some people like jaggery sugar, which is the Indian sugar, and some people have other sorts of raw sugars like rapadura. Should we also be very cautious about the amounts that we take of those?
I think yes, in moderation, you could use them. And the advantage to the jaggery was that they had a traditional way of processing it, which they dried it in the sun, and it made it in the body have an alkaline effect. And so that seems to be an advantage of the jaggery, and that's what Ayurveda then would have traditionally used because of features like that. So the idea would still be to keep it moderate.
What about honey? Does honey have a bad effect on you? Should you be careful with that?
That's a very interesting question. And again, honey is different. And I was quite interested to read that, whereas you might expect honey to increase the sugars in your blood, on the glycemic index, if honey has been heated, then it does. It rapidly raises blood sugar levels, which unfortunately causes a rapid rise in insulin levels, which then drops your blood sugar, and then you get cravings and feel fatigued. Whereas slowly rising blood sugar from foods say fruits, vegetables, the sugars there will be absorbed very slowly because of the fibre in the diet makes the processes of digesting more gentle. But when it comes to honey, if the honey has not been heated, then there is a very slow rise in blood sugar in the blood. So it points out to Ayurveda's very strong recommendation that honey is never heated. And so honey should be taken like the beekeeper would take his. He would never heat his own because he knows it's not good. He, however, may heat the one he's selling you because it gets it out of the comb quicker. And if ever you read a blend of honeys from different countries, that from an Ayurveda perspective would be better in the bin, because heating is necessary to blend them. And once you heat honey, you destroy it, you destroy the enzymes, but Ayurveda says you create a bad toxin from heated honey. So the honey now, you then regard it as a good food if it's never been heated, and in fact a very medicinal food depending on what herbs or shrubs that the bees fed on, because they will have put the medicinal potency of the herb into the honey. So that's another very interesting aspect which is worthy of research. But one always has to remember one's nature. If a person is kapha, lots of honey. If a person is pitta, honey is heating, so very much in moderation. If one is vata, honey has a drying influence, and so again, in relative moderation. And then it's a seasonal thing, especially if it's a hot summer, then honey would not be advised in the heat of a hot summer. Otherwise, wonderful food.